You asked Dr. Lowe whether or not we should be focusing on what we are doing, to come back to the point you've made, to our own energy markets and how this impacts on inflation. You're talking about microeconomic reform. And he said over time, expansion of capital stock that produces cheap, reliable energy will help. To reinforce the point you've just made, Matt Canavan, aren't we going in the opposite direction?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm sure Governor Lowe wouldn't say that openly, but we absolutely are. We've got to make very clear to people out there that this country, Australia, has invested 4 times the amount of solar and wind energy in the last few years than other countries have, than Europe, than North America in per person terms. So 4 times more. Now, we're constantly told by this government and some of the other self-appointed experts around them that renewable energy is the cheapest form of energy out there. Well, if that was so, why is it that the country that is setting records in installing this so-called cheap energy ending up with some of the highest power bills in the world? I mean, Alan, people's power bills have gone up by about $1,000 already in the last few years. They're possibly due to go up by another 1,000 on the projections we see. This is the result of investment in energy systems that do not work, that do the exact opposite of what Philip Lowe was advising on cheap and reliable energy. Renewable energy is definitely not reliable, and it's proven not to be cheap because everywhere where it's installed at a large amount, that area ends up with higher power prices.
And yet we've seen in recent months investments in Queensland and Victoria deferred as a result of the government's intervention in the energy market. You asked that given that those investments won't proceed, and then we had this Clive Palmer mine in Queensland turned down only last week, you said, how much will the impact of lower energy flows in Australia have on inflation? I've used the banana analogy, Matt. I mean, when you have a cyclone in North Queensland, the banana crop gets wiped out, then you've only got bananas from Coffs Harbour. So you go to the supermarket and the banana price, because of a lesser supply or lower flow, to use your words, suddenly the banana price goes through the roof. It's exactly the same with energy. You take certain components, eh?
It's exactly the same, Alan. It's supply and demand. Most kids would understand it. If the supply of something dries up, the price of it will go up with it. And that's exactly what we're seeing in this country. We're already seeing that because we do have some shortages of gas at certain times of the year.
He answered your question. He answered your question.
Power stations fire up.
He answered your question by saying he didn't have an expertise in this area, his words, and quote, hopefully there is more investment somewhere else. But Matt, look, I understand the problems with Dr. Lowe, and he's got to be very discreet.
There. I'm not sure what he meant by that. But
I mean,
anyway,
if the bloke,
I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole because I had limited time.
But I just ask you this question: if the bloke is jacking up in interest rates to drive down inflation, shouldn't he have some expertise in the factors that are creating inflation in the first place, namely energy policy?
Well, as I said, Alan, I do think the bigger villain is Jim Chalmers.
Yeah, definitely.
And I do like your description of Greta Thunberg of politics. He's at about that level of economics. But the governor here got himself a bit tripped up. And as you say, like, it should just be something that a first-year economics student understands about supply and demand. He doesn't need to be an expert in energy markets or know the difference between a petajoule or gigajoule to understand that a lower supply of something will increase the price. That is what we're seeing in this country. There's only one answer that will deliver relief to Australian families over the long term, and that is to increase the supply of Australian energy resources. That includes coal, gas. Yeah, it includes renewables where it works, but focusing on just that latter one, as we have been, leads to disaster. We're on that track right now. Maybe we're not quite to energy hell just yet, but we're certainly in purgatory, and we need to start paying a penance soon if we're going to get through the pearly gates.